Because it's miraculous.
Yes.
It's so incredible. And it's easy to be disbelieving or skeptical or want to justify or explain in a logical
Right.
way why this has happened or that has happened. And I think it takes a lot for us to allow the magic, to allow mystery, even though it's so simple. It also isn't necessarily simple to accept these miraculous things that happen, these signs, these communications, these different ways of knowing and feeling and understanding our lives.
Welcome to the Enchanted Earth Podcast, where you will hear stories of nature with the power to transform our lives. These sacred stories are begging to be shared now. So listen in as my guest today shares one of their own.
So welcome, everybody. Today we have with us Lynda Monk, and let me tell you a little bit about Lynda. Lynda is a registered social worker, certified life coach, and leader of the International Association for Journal Writing, which is an inspirational and educational community for journal writers worldwide. She's the co-editor and co-author of 5 books, including The Great Book of Journaling, and regularly speaks about the healing and transformational power of writing. So welcome, Lynda.
Thank you, Maureen. It's great to be here with you.
Aw, thanks. So we were just laughing and chatting about how we got to know each other, and interesting synchronicity. A friend of mine introduced me to you because she's part of your community of journal writers and absolutely loves it. And then we discovered that we have the same publisher.
Yes. Yeah, that was a fun connection.
Pretty crazy. And I understand you're finishing up a manuscript today.
Yes, it will be submitted today. It's a new book called The Adoptee's Healing Guide and Journal, which I'm really excited about.
Wow. Wow. Well, I am so grateful that you've taken the time today to do this podcast with that, big deadline on your horizon. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. We have to, deadlines keep us moving forward, but it's good to take a little break and talk about something else as well.
Hopefully something fun and playful.
Yeah, definitely.
Wonderful. So journal writing is something that I have done since I'm probably, I don't know, 12 years old. I started writing a journal. I think a lot of girls, young girls, at that time start processing their emotions and feelings and stuff. Just kind of curious how you got into this area of work.
Yeah. Well, like yourself, I'd been a journal writer as a young girl and as a teenager. It always came alongside my life, but it became more central in my work in the first decade of my social work career. I was working in quite high stress, trauma-informed work, and I really turned to my journal as part of my own self-care. And I later went on to do my master's of social work degree, where I focused on learning as much as I could about burnout prevention. I wanted to be in a helping career for many years and stay healthy doing it. So I was curious how to go about that. And during those studies, I learned a lot about the importance of having a reflective practice, having something where we can process our emotions, learn from what we're doing in our field of work. And journaling was mentioned as a key tool for doing that. So I thought that's my secret sauce. I'm just going to keep journaling. And eventually it became more central to some of the teaching I was doing. So a lot of things get accomplished through this simple act of journaling.
Yes, it certainly does. And I am often amazed at revelations I get while I'm writing about an experience, and then realize the deeper layers that there are as I'm writing.
Mhm.
Uh, I think it's a very important complement to the work because it's all really about spiritual development too.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, journaling is something that involves our whole selves. our mind, body, heart, and spirit. We discover things about ourselves and how we're living our lives, how we're interacting with the world around us through having a practice like journaling. So we're not just writing about today, it is more of a place of exploration, curiosity, asking meaningful questions. And I think that's what keeps people coming back to what I consider to be a transformational journaling practice, is when we are discovering new things. And
Very cool. I love it. So I ask all of my guests,
Mhm.
can you tell me a little bit about the land that you were birthed from, where you came from?
Mm. Well, I was born in Kitchener, Ontario, in Canada. And 5 days later, I was taken to London, Ontario, a nearby city where I was placed for adoption. And I spent my years growing up in London, which was sort of flat southwestern Ontario, farmland surrounded by the beautiful Great Lakes. I spent a lot of time in both Lake Erie and also Lake Huron as a child. We had a trailer we went to, our camp we went to every weekend, which was near the lake. And I looked in the family home I grew up in. I looked out the back window to, as far as the eye could see, cornfields and other farm fields, and a kilometer, outside the other direction was the city limits. So I was always a kid who grew up in nature. I moved in my early 20s to British Columbia, first to the central interior of BC, which also had lots of lakes and a much more rugged forest, outdoor bear country. And for the last 25 years, I've lived on Salt Spring Island, which is a Gulf island on the west coast of Canada between Vancouver and Victoria. And it's the unceded territories of numerous First Nations people, including the Coast Salish peoples. And I think land acknowledgement is very important. Land history is very important. And our connection to land and sea and sky is a fundamental part of, I think, what makes for a meaningful and rich and self-aware, once again, life, because we don't just live on a land or come from a place. We are that place. That place is us. And I really believe in how profoundly it shapes us. And the more connected we can be to that awareness of our interconnection, I think the healthier and happier our lives can be.
Yeah, and just such a simple word that changes everything is when you're of a land and
Mhm.
not just from.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Like
like you
even
said, it's such a deeper connection to be of that land. You're a being that was nourished and nurtured and developed relationship, and you're part of that land as well.
Mhm. That connection is something I felt even as a young girl. I can still remember laying down. We had a half-acre lot as where our childhood home was. It's surrounded by other half-acre lots in a small rural community. And I would lay down on my back in the grass. I still remember just laying there. I wouldn't put a blanket under me. I just loved the feeling of the grass, of the earth, and I would look up and see the shapes of the clouds. But I often had this feeling that I could feel like the pulse of the earth. And I would even listen for it. I'd wait for it. And sometimes I'd wonder, is that my own like heartbeat that I'm listening to, or is like the earth pulsing beneath me? And over time, I just really grew to appreciate that there was a pulse, there was a heartbeat to the earth beneath me. Even now, I regularly walk in old growth forests. Blessed to live. They're here. There's a huge tree outside my window right now. And I will, at least weekly, on walks through the forest, I stop and put my hands against the trees, listen to the trees, talk with the trees, and just really feel I'm being in relationship with all that nature is. So it's definitely a very strong connection. And I've raised two sons along the shores of Fulford Harbor. They were both born, and here within hours of their birth from their respective locations where they were born. And Just this past week, I was talking with our youngest son, Jesse, who's 18, and Jackson's 20. And he had taken a road trip to Alberta recently with his girlfriend, which is, flatlands and the Rocky Mountains and just spectacular. And he loves a lot about Alberta. He's a real, cowboy and country music fan. And I was asking him, did he think he would ever like to live there? And he just stood and looked out our windows, and he just stood and took a deep breath and looked out to the ocean. And he said, Mom, I could never leave the water. It's like part of who I am. I could never live away from the ocean. I've always been grateful that this is the place we've raised our children, but it's something where that connection to nature, it's nothing we had to teach them, or we didn't have to teach them to be stewards of the land or pick up garbage if they saw it on the ground. I don't remember ever once having to suggest that to my boys or to tell them not to litter. They just became stewards of the land by virtue of it being their home ground. It's their home within themselves, but it's also the home where they live. And they innately recognize that. It's never had to be a teachable moment. Nature itself taught them what, she needs from them. It's really an unspoken stewardship of this place, and recognition that this place is giving so much to us, that the beauty of nature gives so freely to us to enrich our lives, and it's there to appreciate and give thanks for. I always have a saying I have for a long time, and it's how I've raised my boys, that nature is our church and gratitude is our prayer. And we often do gratitude circles around our meal table. And they haven't been raised in any sort of religion, but they have been raised with a very strong spiritual practice and earth-based practices. And when we look at things like climate crisis, I think we need people who appreciate that this isn't just a place we're here to take advantage of. It is a place we're here to truly cherish and have reverence for. And living close to nature, I think, teaches us that without having to do too much else.
Yeah. Yes. And I was just going to say that I'm sure you and your husband are modeling this reverence for nature. So, that is such an important part of, like you said, doing your gratitude circles around the dinner table. That's such a beautiful practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you've moved quite a bit through your life from kind of, well, not quite the East Coast, but over to British Columbia, which I've been lucky to be visited there twice. It is just spectacular. And it just sounds like, it sounds like a beautiful place to live. Cannot imagine wanting to move out of there either if I was your son.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you have a story you'd like to share that you feel was a meaningful or profound connection in nature? You have many.
I have many. One is that I regularly go to what are called rising moon dances, full moon dances, that are facilitated by Five Rhythms, a teacher here on Salt Spring, a movement. She does lots with movement and move your abilities and so forth. And we all gather out at Ruckle Park, great big, bluff, and have headphones that we put on, and so you can hear the music, but it's actually silent. And she plays her beautiful music. She always sets a theme, tells us what the theme of that rising moon is, and some of the ways we might look to its meaning in our own lives. It starts with a sharing circle. She'll pose a question. So recently, the August full moon was around, what do we remember loving as children, or what enchants us? How do we bring our enchantment into our daily lives now? So there's always something, an inquiry that we sit with before we do our dance practice. And as we're dancing, this last dance, the full moon was coming up. You could see hints of the light, and it's reflecting on the ocean, and big BC ferries all lit up, or starting to are moving out in the waters. And we couldn't see a lot of the moon, but we knew it was there. You knew where its position was. There were little hints of light. And partway through this dance, which goes over an hour, she talked about that metaphor of the clouds being in front of the moon and how there can often be things in front of our own enchantment or our own happiness, our own joy. And what does it take to move what gets in the way? And I just remember this feeling in this collective dance. There's probably 25, 30 people there, all lit up with their, headphones dancing around. You're dancing on your own, but you're dancing in community. And as after she said that, I started visualizing, like asking the clouds to move, like that the clouds moving would be also a symbol of that, what blocks our enchantment or my enchantment out of the way. And it was like the whole collective had set that intention, because very slowly the clouds started to thin out. More and more of the moon became visible. The moon was rising, coming above the cloud. And towards the end of the dance, the entire full moon was just illuminated in the sky, a huge beam of moonbeam across the ocean that was coming right to me, to all of us. And it was like we were in a conversation with the clouds, our bodies, this full moon, our own enchantment. And it's so powerful, it's visceral. Like when that moon appeared, I remember just this feeling of goosebumps and just this aliveness in my own body and the collective dance. And I've had so many of those moments where it's not just this moment of me being in nature. It is the collective nature of me, the moon, the sea, the people, the big forest, the earth beneath us, the big rock bluff. And it's all actually a fully living communication. And when those clouds started to shift, I felt like it wasn't just a coincidence. It felt like there is this deep conversation happening, and that can be heard both ways. Those clouds can hear us, and yeah, that it's not just a silent happening. It's a very alive, vibrant, powerful connection that's happening. And I was in this journal I told you that I'm submitting the manuscript for today. It has 7 healing pathways for adoptees and 49 touchstones of healing elements and wholeness as adoptees. And in it, I include excerpts from my journal. And I printed one of them because I thought it might be a little example of another moment where I spent in nature and having that connection. So I could just read it if that's okay.
Sure.
It's in the section on wholeness in the journal, and in it I include from the pages of my journal just excerpts and stories and so forth. So the theme was wholeness. It's not very long. Years ago, I was floating naked in the ocean off a secluded beach on the big island of Hawaii. I was alone and had left Peter and the boys playing in the shallow water together, splashing and looking for sea turtles. My parents had just been with us for 2 weeks, and it was the biggest trip they had ever taken in their lives. During this time together, it became very evident that my dad was declining with Alzheimer's disease. I could see parts of him were disappearing, and they were not going to return. As I was floating in the water, I could feel the emotional weight of grief in the water with me as my tears mixed with the salt water of the sea. I felt a piece of my dad's wholeness was leaving, and a new part of my own was going to have to be found. I knew I was going to have to help my parents sell their home of over 40 years, downsize, move, get care, and so on. I knew there was big and heartful work ahead. It felt scary. While I floated alone, held by the ocean beneath me, I felt the sea whisper in my ear, "I've got you. I will hold you above water as you witness your dad submerge into Alzheimer's." I realized love has to be willing to hold the wholeness of each other, even the missing parts. I realized I have to love the wholeness of myself too, even the parts I haven't met yet.
Wow.
But I still remember this feeling of floating in the ocean, and that we can remember crying in this sense of like the salt water of my tears mixing into the salt water of the ocean. And my head was underwater. And I had that feeling of the ocean like whispering to me, of talking to me. And it's another example of that connection and also the wisdom that our moments in nature are giving us and the support that our time in nature is giving us if we really pay attention. Equally at the same time, there could have been someone on a beach face down, scrolling on a phone, not even noticing what's there, not even hearing what's available or feeling the connection. And that's, I think, a really big difference is how we engage with and see ourselves connected to all that is here. And that is a conscious choice. And it is also something that isn't hard to do. It's just tuning in and being willing and listening and trusting. And it's happened so many times in my life daily. It's not a
Yeah.
rare occurrence. It's how I live my life is in this communion with with place. And it's with me. We're a team.
Oh, Lynda, beautiful, beautiful story to share in that book. So vulnerable. And like you said, it's not hard to do, yet feeling comfortable enough to be vulnerable in these moments in nature. I mean, I think the one of the threads of all these experiences and absolutely the two that you just shared here is approaching the experience with an open expansiveness of the heart and willing to embrace this, whatever we receive back from nature.
Mhm.
Absolutely beautiful. Both very watery,
Mm. Mhm.
the moon and the ocean. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, there's something about water. Now, water is consciousness. Conscious, water is, so many people are saying now that water is kind of condensed light.
I love that. Mm.
And it's a vehicle for consciousness to move throughout the planet.
Mm.
It's the
Mm. I
vehicle
love
for
that.
water to move through our bodies and through the plant life and the trees and even rocks and the
Mm.
soil, right?
Mm. Mm. So often nature is like how I understand experience. So just for example, in this book project and another one of the excerpts from my journal, there's a section where I talk about remembering our radiance, in that we're all here shining in some way and we're part of a collective lightness in the world. But I tell a story of walking down the beach, and I love picking up one. I'm really drawn to heart rocks and just seeing, the beach is filled with stones and shells, and it's West Coast beach here on the island, so it's not like sandy beaches. It's a little more rugged. And I'll often pick up a stone as I walk along, and I'll find myself like just dipping them in the water and then rubbing them off until they're shiny. And that, I think, like that so much metaphor of our life lives in all of this, like how in our own experience we might feel, a little bit metaphorically covered in dirt, or we might feel, anxious or overwhelmed or sad, or all the, hard things we can feel in our lives, grief, and also all the wonderful things, joy and happiness and bliss and pleasure, etc. But as I was rubbing the stone, I was thinking about like sometimes we just have to do a little work to get some of that, dirt or debris or heaviness that might be blocking how we shine, like those clouds moving to see our light and enchantment and our sense of enchantment. But it's still there. And I'll often, when I'm in nature, have these moments where as I'm doing something like that, picking up a rock, you know, sort of polishing it in my hands with the ocean's water. These sorts of things, well, these insights or recognitions or memories or affirmations, that they'll come to me because that's what nature is giving. I didn't say, oh, I think I'll go for a walk and pick up a rock and polish it off and remember that, sometimes there's dirt and we have to clear it. No, it's in the moment of being there and just the intuitive following of what gets attention, what gets gathered, what gets touched, heard, smell, the whole sensory experience of being in nature wholeheartedly. All these teachings come just from doing that. It's not like you sit and think, oh, what would be a metaphor for how we shine? It's like I just started writing about, well, what are my experiences? And that experience came. And so it's already giving the insight all by itself. So many special moments in my life have been so nature-based, nature integrated. When Peter and I got married, we'll celebrate our 21st wedding anniversary, September 11th, which is also my birthday. And when we got married at home, we had about 80 family and friends with us, and they were all down on the beach, and we have a grassy stairs down to the beach. And so then the tide was coming in, so we kind of had to hurry because people were standing down there. And one of the rituals we did in our marriage ceremony, our wedding ceremony, was to my niece, one of my best friend's daughters, her Auntie Lynda, chosen kin. She collected rocks the day of our wedding and had them in a basket. And partway through the ceremony, we had everyone had a rock they got from the basket. And we'd ask them to please just hold the rock and set an intention that they have for our life together. And at the same time, they all released the rocks and they all went out into Fulford Harbor, and all the ripples were touching each other. And there's a beautiful photo of all these, splashes of rocks. And it was so special, and it was just so instinctual to do something like that. And I loved how everyone just joined in. And in our ceremony we acknowledged the four directions and the elements, and that was sort of the foundation of that ceremony. And a short time later, a month later, was pregnant with our son Jackson. We had experienced pregnancy losses before we got married, and our friends knew that, including a twin pregnancy. And so when we shared with our friends and friends and family we were pregnant after the wedding, almost everyone said, that was my wish on that rock. So we always have shared with Jackson, he was born from the power of these wishing rocks. And so I knew when I heard that, because as I said, we'd had these pregnancy losses, and you're a little nervous, when you're pregnant again, to pray, hope that you're going to get, through. And when I heard everyone say that about the rocks, I'm like, this is going to be okay. I'm going to be holding a baby in my arms this time, because they've been, so fully supported to come into being. And he's 20 now, and I still wrap my arms around him. He's 6'4" now, so it's a little more of a. But I just had this such reassuring feeling through the pregnancy that all would be well because of this sort of, divine initiation with these rocks.
Oh, that is just beautiful. That is such a beautiful ceremony, and I love that ritual. Ah,
yeah. People still talk about it.
Yeah,
yeah,
and it is such a simple thing. I mean, really, like you said, just echoing what you said, it doesn't take a lot to open to this connection to nature and to start a relationship. It just takes being present, like you said, not scrolling on, your phone on the beach, but to be present and just open. And that's where it starts.
Look up.
I would like
look up.
And look up. Yeah, that's another thing. Yes. I'm curious, do you think we all have these experiences?
I think we probably have them to varying degrees, but being awareness, with having awareness, there's lots of things we might experience in life and can miss if we're not consciously choosing to be aware, to be mindful. I mean, I think of breathing. When I go into my meditation practice or any kind of mindfulness practice, I become very aware of it. Even though I'm doing it all the time, it's not always in my awareness that I'm taking a breath, nor could it be,
Right.
it happens
Right.
frequently, or blinking.
Yes.
It's happening all the
Right.
time, but you might only be aware of it if you get, something in your eye or whatever. So I think, yes, I think lots of these moments are happening all the time, but whether we notice them or not, and then can get that extra benefit from them is probably another thing. And I think a lot of people, this connection with nature, it is a conscious choice. And some people may never tune into it. They're just moving about in their life in cars and cities and materialism and their
S-
focus is someplace else.
Self-absorbed. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
or it's not really something that, like
It's
farmers, they know the land because they're with it every day, or people, like I think about the beautiful learning I've had in First Nations and our Indigenous communities here in Canada, where I've had the privilege of being and learning and so forth. That the medicine wheel is part of their life. The integration of a whole self, the cycles of their life are like nature is their teacher and guide. It's so different. I think cultures and communities and may have more awareness and access because it's
oh
how they
yeah.
live, what they
Right.
cultivate. And
Yeah.
so I don't think at any moment, I think someone can awaken to the powerful connection with nature. And it could even take people, you know, off guard. They could be, I watch the cycle of
Yes.
the moon all the time, but I know, for example, when we've had someone stay we have a bed and breakfast, a cottage here, and the stories that people will write in the guest book about their encounters with herons and eagles and see the otters and the full moon, like they're just it's just breathtaking, and it changes them. That it you can see with what they write in those guest books how it gave them something they didn't have before they got there. It gave them that replenishment, that connection, that memory of our own primal nature. And so sometimes we maybe have to put effort to get into places that help us have that remembering or have that awakening inside. But I do believe it's possible, because it's not impossible, because it's actually all what's real. We are all of this nature. So there's no way someone cannot have it. It's by virtue of being alive we have it. But whether how tuned in, how it's been cultivated, what we're taught about it, how much value we give to it, all so many factors, I'm sure, play into how much we can really tune into it and access it. But do I believe it's there? Absolutely.
You know, I have found in my years of writing this book, The Enchanted Earth, and now doing the podcast, I've probably spoken to about 150 people, close to 200. When I start thinking about people around me who ask me what I do, people I, just meet, and we start talking about this. So I find that everybody seems to have a story. And I'll tell you the most common story that I hear that I would say are probably from people who don't have the worldview that, say, you and I share, of this reciprocity, of this dialogue with nature, and are more from a perhaps traditional Western view. Not traditional, because traditional sounds like the First Nations, but
Mm.
more of the Western view of the world. The most common story I hear are they're grieving, and then an appearance of a bird or a butterfly that they see as the essence of their loved one that has passed, who is helping them and supporting them and saying, I'm still here. I think that is the most common story that I hear, even from the most jaded people.
Mm-hmm.
But yet I see that as kind of a gateway, but it's there. And it can be an opening to some more exploration. But I just find some of the people who tell me these stories then go, oh, yeah, but I know it wasn't. It's like, no, I'm telling them, no, it was.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's miraculous.
Yes.
You know, it's so incredible. And it's easy to be disbelieving or skeptical or want to justify or explain in a logical
Right.
way why this has happened or that has happened. And I think it takes a lot for us to allow the magic, to allow mystery, even though it's so simple. It also isn't necessarily simple to accept these miraculous things that happen, these signs, these communications, these different ways of knowing and feeling and understanding our lives. And to me, there's something so comforting about being part of, because we're never alone. We think of the epidemic of loneliness that's in our world right now, at a time in history when we've never been more connected. Palm of our hand, we can connect in the world in a split second. And yet, one of the most challenging things to our individual and collective mental health and well-being is social isolation and loneliness. And I think coming back to our awareness of our connection with the earth and all of it is in a way a medicine for this loneliness, because you don't have to do anything other than to tune into it and believe in it and cherish it for it to infuse our lives with such a sense of connection. I never feel lonely, and whether I'm alone or otherwise. And it's not because I know that, I could go live in the bush for months and I don't think I would ever feel lonely, because I wouldn't be alone. It's just everything is there. And in fact, when I really
Lynda,
want to, yeah.
I was just going to say, and you've got your books and your journaling.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I would do.
I was just going to say the other thing is that when you're journaling, you have a constant companion. You have the constant companion of your own observations, feelings, noticings. I think journaling has helped me have this deep connection with nature, because so often when I'm writing, it's those experiences that start coming through, or I love to write outside. So it's writing in nature is profound. And I have colleagues and friends, people like Jackie Holder, who I know you've had or will have on your podcast, who has a whole body of work about writing through the wisdom of trees. We have a course in our IHAW. Inner outer. Yeah, that's her card deck. See, nature just gave us that's all. And so the interconnectedness of people and practices and teachings, and so in our International Association for Journal Writing, she has a course called Writing Through the Wisdom of Trees, an online course. And it's so beautiful. It's these essays she's written. It's the teachings of different trees and the metaphor, our relationship with them. And it's such a rich exploration. And there's lots of people who have these nature-based writing practices and books written on it. And, and other practices that are about awakening and awareness, like meditation and writing and yoga and writing, and all these different other things that are also gateways to our expansion, our consciousness, our awareness, our awareness of connection. So it's a very rich territory, our inner worlds and our outer worlds.
Oh, well, I think that's a beautiful wrap up, but do you have anything else you would like to share before we end this interview?
Well, if it feels like it's far away, or this connection feels nebulous, or something maybe that some people have and other people don't, I would just really invite anyone just to take their shoes off and go step on the earth, go sit outside and close their eyes and breathe, maybe put their hands over their heart and just remember the connection that's already there. You don't actually have to force it. You just have to allow it, remember it, and then see what magic comes. And
Wow.
in terms of journaling, I would love on our website, iajw.org, there's a free journaling gift there that can help you to go to the page. There's lots of different prompts and just encouragement for how to create and also deepen your own journaling practice so it can be that companion practice that can enrich your connection with all things, including nature and yourself.
Wonderful. I'll put that link in the show notes for everybody.
Okay, great.
Wonderful.
Great. Thank you.
Well, Lynda, I'm so grateful for you to share your beautiful stories all the way from BC. And yeah, I hope all of you have enjoyed it as much as I. And I would love for you to comment any thoughts you have based on our conversation. Please write them down and we will comment. And please like, share, and subscribe. And have a beautiful day, everybody.
Maureen, I just want to thank you before we sign off because you're, part of the channel of awareness about this meaningful connection that we have with nature. And we need teachers, we need lights, we need people who, live this connection, who can share it with others so that maybe if they haven't felt it yet or brought it into their awareness, they can. And so I just really want to acknowledge your beautiful work in the world. And this work is needed now more than ever. We're hungry for things that are real, authentic, things that remind us who we truly are. And the work you're doing is part of that. So thank you very much. And thank you for having me as your guest.
Wow, Lynda, thank you. Oh, beautiful. All right, everybody, have a beautiful day.
Thank you for being a part of the Enchanted Earth Podcast. Please hit the subscribe button so that you'll know when we publish another inspiring episode. Check out my book, The Enchanted Earth, available wherever online books are sold. Thank you and have a magical day.